Managing partner of EB-5AN. Thank you for taking some time to join us on today's webinar. Today we're going to be discussing the transition from H-1B visa over to EB-5 via an adjustment of status. We'll cover this topic and also share some details about some of the current EB-5 investment projects that are open today, as well as some additional advice about how to work closely with an EB-5 immigration attorney to prepare an EB-5 application and get it submitted in a timely fashion. All right, this is a quick overview of the flow of the webinar that we're going to cover on the left-hand side here. So to start, a little bit about EB-5AN. We're a leading EB-5 investment fund manager. We've worked with almost 3,000 families from more than 70 different countries since 2013. We have many regional centers that cover the entire continental United States, and we work with project developers across that region to try to seek out the most compelling EB-5 investment projects from both an immigration and financial perspective. One of the things that makes us unique among our competitor regional centers is we're committed to investment transparency. We provide the full set of documents and financial statements for investors to review in their entirety before making an investment decision, so they have all the potential information needed to make a fully informed decision. We also have a very, very active blog and YouTube channel with over 1,000 videos, hundreds and hundreds of articles and downloads about tips and suggestions and kind of frameworks for how to evaluate both immigration and financial risk for projects that are all completely free on our site. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Sam Silverman, one of the two managing partners of EB-5AN. A little bit about my background and bio is there on the left-hand side. We talked about all of the regional center coverage that EB-5AN has. We cover the entire continental United States plus Puerto Rico, which allows us the flexibility to seek out the best, most compelling projects, agnostic of their geographic location. This is a map of some of the countries where investors have invested from over the years, and some of the different publications that our projects and our company have been featured in over the last 13 years. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest panelist, Ali Chavez Subhan, who's with us today, is an established EB-5 immigration attorney who's worked with many, many clients over the years, and he's going to help explain what are some of the main benefits for H-1B visa holders considering doing an EB investment, and why now is a good time for those on an H-1B to seriously consider EB-5. But before we jump into those topics, I'll let Ali introduce himself and share a little bit about his background and experience, and then we'll jump right into the main topics.
Thanks, Sam, for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. As Sam mentioned, my name is Ali Chavez Subhan. I'm the managing attorney at Subhan Law. We help foreign investors, entrepreneurs, and companies to achieve their business formation, immigration, investment, and tax objectives in the United States. That's what sets our firm apart from other firms, is that we kind of have a one-stop shop. We have experience with corporate law, tax law, as well as immigration and securities law. We have a little bit about our team and our background. We have attorneys who used to be former counsel at U.S. embassies, part of the big four accounting firms from Deloitte, Harvard grads, and also directors of foreign investment programs. So we have a well-diverse background in real estate, finance, corporate law, and tax and immigration. And that really helps us when we're doing complicated source of funds for EB-5 and working on projects with Sam and his team.
Perfect, thank you. And yeah, that is not a very common set of skills and experience under one roof. A lot of times the tax function and the securities function are usually pretty separate or only really present at a really huge law firm. So that is a really unique aspect. and valuable aspect as well. All right, so to start, let's start with just kind of an overview. What is an adjustment of status, and who is it possibly applicable to, and how does an H-1B investor kind of benefit from that?
Sure. So the adjustment of status application, also known as the I-485, allows someone who's inside the United States to adjust from their status. So whether if they entered legally here in the United States, they've come under a certain category, and that category gives them a certain status, then they have certain obligations and rights within the United States. So people that are here on H-1B, they can file for an adjustment of status to get a green card, and that allows them to avoid returning to their home country and waiting for consular processing. They can file concurrently, meaning they can file for their green card along with a work permit and a travel permit. And we see those processing times kind of shortening right now. I'm sure we'll go over the processing times a little bit later, but you can get it's a fast way to get your work permit as well. And then of course you get access to a green card, which allows you to live and work permanently in the United States anywhere that you choose. The benefit of that is when you're here on an H-1B, your status is directly tied to your sponsoring employer. So, you know, your job security and your family security is tied to that employer. Whereas when you have your green card, you have much more flexibility, and you have the opportunity to work for anyone that you're eligible, including starting your own company. So I think that really is a huge benefit for people that are on H-1B. And then once you get your green card, there's a pathway to citizenship.
Got it. All right, let's talk a little bit about who's going to qualify for this and how does that kind of fit together with eligibility?
Sure. So as we just mentioned, adjustment of status is open to those foreign entrepreneur or foreign nationals who are here in a certain classification. So whether they came as a tourist or a business visitor on a B1, B2, as a student, or as a specialty occupation worker on H-1B, could have come as an executive or a manager transferring from a foreign company to the US under the L1 visa, or they could have come in as a investor on an E2. Today we're talking about the H-1B and specialty occupation workers, including scientists, engineers, computer programmers. The EB-5 program allows for a person on H-1B to file a concurrent filing while they're here within the United States to apply for their green card. And that's a huge benefit. And as we see right now in this current, political environment, that there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of volatility. So if you want something that has more certainty, people that are on H-1B, we highly recommend that you look at, and if you have the means, look at filing for concurrent adjustment of status through an EB-5 regional center such as EB-5AN.
All right, so let's kind of walk through what the flow looks like for an investor considering EB-5 and what forms and filings they're going to have to do, kind of as they work their way through that process to get the permanent green card eventually.
Sure. So one of the first steps, once you've spoken with your immigration attorney, made sure that you qualify for the requirements, the next step is choosing a regional center to work with. And once you find a project that you feel comfortable with investing in, you're going to sign a subscription booklet, and then you'll transfer your funds into that project. So after speaking with your attorney to make sure that those funds can be traced properly. Once you make the wire, then you're going to file your concurrent filing. And there's 4 main applications with that. The first is the I-526E, which is actually the EB-5 petition itself. The next one is the I-45, which is the adjustment of status application, also known as the green card. Your I-765 is the employment authorization document, also known as a work permit. And finally is your I-131, which is your travel permit, also known as advanced parole. After we file, the next step would be that you'll receive your EAD approval, your work permit approval. Typically right now we're seeing time frames, averaging, anywhere 3 to 6 months. And then with your I-765 approved, you also receive your travel permit approval. It comes as right now what's known as a combo card. It looks like a driver's license, and your work permit and your travel permit will be on one physical card. After that, you'll receive your I-526E approval, depending on if you choose to go with a rural project or a high unemployment project. I think right now processing times are averaging about 5 to 10 months for rural projects and 12 to 24 months for high unemployment and beyond and plus. So once your I-526E is approved, shortly thereafter, your I-45 will be approved as well. And then 2 years after those approval, the green card is approved, you have to file what's called a removal of conditions, which is an I-829 application. And then once that's approved, you will receive a 10-year green card.
Perfect. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so looking at it kind of more visually, walk us through kind of how the EB-5 immigration attorney kind of fits in with this application, and how that work is going to happen prior to the major filings.
Sure, Sam. So as we mentioned, the first thing you should do, and this isn't just me saying this is if you went to EB-5AN as well, they'd recommend you do this, is you should speak to an immigration attorney, because you want to make sure that you meet the criteria for an EB-5, that your source of funds are going to be able to be traced properly, and an immigration attorney is going to help you to do that. Once you have selected your immigration attorney, the next, which could take maybe approximately a month, depending on your due diligence, choosing a professional attorney. After that, you'll want to select a regional center and a project. Typically, our clients that we work with, when they're doing their due diligence on a project, might take approximately up to 2 months. And that includes, looking at all the project materials, which EB-5AN is one of those regional centers that is very transparent with all their project documents. And we really are fortunate to be able to work with them with a company that is so transparent. So once you pick your project and you make the investment, you then need to start doing and preparing your source of funds and to file your petition. That whole length of time from selecting your immigration attorney, doing your due diligence through source of funds can take approximately around 3 months. It depends on how complicated the source of funds is, though. After that, once we file, then you're going to have your I-45 adjustment of status application processing with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. As we mentioned, that process can take anywhere from 5 months all the way up to 24 months, depending on the type of project you select. Rural projects right now they are processing faster than projects in a high employment area. So that's something to look at. Once your I-45 application is processing, as we mentioned, your I-765, your work permit should be processed first. And sometimes we're seeing those, as you see on the chart, approximately 5 to 6 months to be approved. Your I-131 typically will be approved at the same time. And then afterwards, you're going to be looking at your I-526E, the immigration petition. That's going to be approved, as we stated, anywhere between 5 to 10 months on a rural project and 12 months plus on a high unemployment project. The I-526E is approved first, and then your I-45 is going to be approved. They're two separate applications, but they generally are approved very close in time after the I-526E. Your green card application should then also be approved.
All right, perfect. Let's switch over and talk a little bit about benefits. So the EAD and advanced parole, what kind of benefits are going to be available to an H-1B investor who makes an EB-5 investment and then successfully completes their adjustment of status? And how's that going to differ from, had they just not gone forward with EB-5 and stayed on H-1B?
Sure, absolutely, Sam. So as we mentioned before, one of the huge benefits is that they can apply for an EAD, employment authorization document. And once that's approved, they can then work anywhere in the United States that they're eligible. They no longer have to be tied to their specific sponsoring employer. And I'll give you just one example, a recent example, and a very unfortunate example of a client that we were working with. He was working at Oracle for 15 years as a software engineer, and Oracle ended up laying him off early last year or late last year. And he had been in the country for 15 years in Silicon Valley. Had a family, raised a family here, had a home, had many different assets. And he was literally on the brink of having to return to a country that he hadn't been to in many, many years, almost more than 20 years. And it was very frightening and very scary for him and his family. And they were looking at the EB-5. So if he would have applied for that sooner and he would have had his EAD, he would have had the flexibility to go out and look in the workforce to get that job that he needed, rather than be restricted by the H-1B. And then when they laid him off, he only had a 60-day grace period to find a job. Whereas if you have this EAD, there is no grace period anymore. So I think that's something that H-1B holders really have to think about. That's a huge benefit, that you have the flexibility to work anywhere in the United States, and and you get the other benefits as well as banking. You'll get housing. You can get your Social Security number, which allows you to build credit here in the United States. And the second application that you would file for as well is your travel permit, and that allows you to then travel outside of the United States and return without abandoning your green card application. So we have many clients as well that want to travel back home to visit with a loved one. Something might be happening in their life, where someone gets ill and they need to go back and visit, and that gives them the benefit to do that, and they can feel an assurance that they'll be able to re-enter the country lawfully, and have their green card application continue to process.
Got it. Okay, perfect. All right, let's talk a little bit about current I-526E approval rates, meaning applications for green cards filed under the current RIA rules. So what are we seeing here, Holly?
So The approval rating, obviously, as you see, is very high for rural projects. Most people are applying into rural projects, and that reason why is because the processing times are faster, right? And so, but just because processing times are faster doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to do due diligence on those projects. You still do. And so that's where we see most of the clients going into rural projects. If especially H-1B, where a lot of the applicants who are on H-1B might come from a country whose priority dates need to apply under a rural application. So that's what we're seeing. And then, of course, China, they're one of the largest applicant pools, followed by India, and then other countries. So I think you probably have more of the data than I do on these approval ratings, but I would say it's a very high approval percentage, as you can see, 97+%. 5 times as many people are selecting rural projects, and 96% of applicants overall choose to invest in the EB-5 program through a regional center like EB-5 AN. And I think, and I'm unbiased, I work with, but I can tell you that EB-5 has some of the best rural projects that we've seen, and that's why we enjoy working with them.
Got it. One thing I want to highlight here is just looking at these statistics on the left-hand side here. It's basically 5 to 1. So 5 times as many investors have gotten their approvals in rural projects compared to urban. So it's really a significant difference if we look at just what priority processing under rural really means. You're essentially 5 times more likely to get your approval. Generally speaking, when looking at these numbers, and when we look at our own almost 800 green card application approvals in rural projects, we're seeing an increasing kind of processing time. In the last 6-7 months, we've seen processing, 80% of our investors are getting approved in about 8 to 11 months who select a rural project. So pretty compelling to get approval within a year, and then just a few months after that for the interview, fingerprints, and then actually getting the physical green card. So it really is happening quickly. All right, so let's spend a few minutes here. So what can you do now that you're seriously considering EB-5? The first step really is to hire an immigration attorney as soon as possible. The grandfathering clause of the current rules expires at the end of September. We only have 6-7 months remaining before the rules could potentially change. And so getting started earlier, source of funds, always takes longer than you think. You got to budget 1 to 2 months minimum. And so there's a limited number of EB-5 attorneys in the space, and even more limited number of those that you'd actually want to work with. And they're in short demand. So finding that attorney that you're comfortable with, that has the experience and who has the capacity and is charging a fair price to be able to work with you is really critical. So no matter what project you pick, you've got to work with an experienced attorney. So you always want to kind of get that underway, hired first, while at the same time you can start to look at projects. But you really want to get the attorney hired, start working on your source of funds. Home equity line of credits are pretty common, but they take time to set up, get documentation. If you're bringing funds from out of the country, that's going to take more time. If documents need to be translated from another language, that's also going to take more time. So you've just got to, plan accordingly and start earlier. And then, once you get close, as Ollie was describing, once you get close to finishing your source of funds documentation with your attorney, then you've got to finalize an investment project. And you're going to do that by, evaluating, okay, Do I want to do a rural project? Do I want to do an urban project? What's the financial security of the project? How many jobs has it created? What are the total jobs? What's the quality of the project itself? Who's developing it? Do they have a good reputation for repaying investments on time? And so, that's going to take some time, a month or so to review, visit some projects, read over all the documents. As Ali mentioned, we're one of the few regional centers that actually gives you all the documents to review, including the financial statements. So you're going to see every document that we have that's relevant to the investment, and then be able to ask questions, go visit the project, etc. And that just doesn't happen overnight. So it's really critical to leave a few months, before planning to file your application, and make sure everything goes pretty smoothly. Ali, anything you want to add to that before we shift over to discussing a few projects and wrap up?
I mean, I think you covered everything very well, Sam. One thing I would mention is, one of the things that, after working with you guys for a long time and listening to our clients, I think one of the things when you're looking at immigration firms too is you want to look for somebody who has, as Sam said, is experienced in the space, that you will have direct access to, so that when you're talking to that attorney, that you're going to be working with that attorney and not just hand it off to a paralegal. And that's what makes our firm different too. As a boutique firm, you'll have direct access to me or one of our other senior EB-5 attorneys. And we're competitive on the pricing. And so when we give you the price, that includes everything from start to finish. It includes relocation concierge services as well, where we help you to look at schools, we help you to look at different areas, and we also include translation services as well. So I think that's something else to look at when you're comparing immigration attorneys. And as Sam mentioned, you do want to be mindful of the source of funds and how long things are going to take. It usually does take longer than you perceive it will. So do give yourself enough time and be practical and reasonable about the timing and when you want to when you're looking to go into an EB-5 project.
Perfect. Yep, those are all important points. All right, so we'll spend just a couple minutes talking about a few current projects, and then we'll conclude. So one of the things that also sets EB-5 apart from competitors is variety and kind of a array of choice, let's say. So a lot of other regional centers, they're focused on just selling one or two projects, typically either urban or rural. Our strategy is that a one size fits all isn't the best approach for our clients. We want to have 5, 6, 7 different open projects at any one point, because we know that an investor from Canada is different from an investor from China who's living in Europe, let's say. Investors have different financial situations, different risk tolerance, different preferences in terms of getting money back faster, getting the green card faster. So under the new rules with rural and urban projects, there's kind of different structural aspects of projects. And so we believe having more projects, more choice allows investors to kind of make a better choice given their personal preferences and situation. So on the rural side, and again, these are the projects with the fastest green card approval. All of these projects are already pre-approved by the USCIS, which means they already have the Form I-956F exemplar approval letter, which we can share with clients for each of these. So the rural ones, Bay Creek, master planned senior loan project under construction in Virginia. Twin Lakes, Georgia, another master plan community. This has been a very popular project with investors over the last few years. Almost 900 homes sold, almost 5,000 jobs already created. Large project, very large developer. The Coulter Group is building that one. They've done hundreds and hundreds of projects, almost 40 billion in development since 1997. And then we have Grant Park, another senior loan mortgage secured project. Established community outside of Denver, where development's been going on for more than 20 years and just is kind of being expanded with the current phase with EB-5. So those are a couple of the rural projects. And in general, these are large kind of master plan communities that have been going on for a while, lots of proof of history of sales, and just EB-5 is just being used to kind of finance the current development activities. And then on the urban side, Springhaven, another project being developed by the Coulter Group, essentially the same as Twin Lakes, but just not in a rural area. And then Terracea multifamily loan and equity. It's the same project, but two different options for investors to join the equity option with a higher 5% return, or the loan option with a with a parent company repayment guarantee and a shorter 3-year principal loan term with an extension. So that kind of gives a little array of the different projects we have open now. In February 2026, we come out with new projects every couple of months. So definitely keep an eye on our website where we'll list all the currently open projects. And with that, just before we wrap up, Ali, maybe share a few bits of information about how you work with new clients. What is the onboarding process like, and how do clients communicate with you during the source of funds documentation process to make sure everything goes nice and smooth?
Sure. So when you work with us, I mean, obviously we have different offices around the country. Right now I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where our headquarters is. We have another office in Sarasota, Florida, which is in between Miami and Tampa. And then we also have an office in Latin America in Bogota, Colombia. So we're happy to meet you in person, but a lot of our clients, we meet with them remotely, and we're able to provide access to the tools that we use to get all the documentation that we need remotely, including a client portal. You have a designated communication channel with us. We use an app called Slack. And like I said before, you have direct access to myself or another senior EB-5 attorney, and we work with you directly. We'll look at it. We'll do a document review of your source of funds. We'll let you know exactly what we need, and we'll have you give us those documents in a secure fashion into a client portal. And then you always have direct communication with us. Like I said, 24/7. You have a secure designated communication line. We also use WhatsApp for our clients in Latin America. We know that they like to use that. But we're very responsive. We respond to our clients within 1 business day. And yeah, I think, the way that we work is we try to treat our clients just the way we would want to be treated. So like I said, we're very responsive, and you will always have direct access to us, and we look forward to working with you. If you want to contact us, you can reach us. Our information is there on the screen, and we'd be happy to talk with you more about EB-5.